My goodness, it started. This phone is too cool. I like put my hand. Oh my god! I put my hand up, and it started recording. Um, but wait, I need to turn this mic on, just in case that mic is not good enough. You get me? Hello. Oh, there's no SD card. Well, that's is useful. That is useful. You know what? Fuck it. Let's go without the microphone. I died it immediately anyway. So, I wanted to make this video like just because I keep having thoughts, you know. I keep having these thoughts, and I keep not really sharing them. Sometimes it comes too quickly for me to write it down, and then I don't film it, and then it just goes into the ether, and then years later I regret it. It's like, why didn't I make all these videos showing my ideas, showing my progress, blah 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 blah. Okay, so this is me practicing speaking and with the potential of sharing this video. Yeah, I think one of the big things on my mind, I've just moved to the UK, and I was born in London, right? And like from a young age, my family left London, left the UK when I was 4 years old. So my memories of this place were quite, I guess, nostalgic and kind of rose-colored glasses, in the sense that it was all about. I remember the brick side paths, like the pavements, and how it's such a walkable city, and the public transport, and the double-decker buses, and just like, wow, we're in London, and it's multicultural, and there's just people from all over the world here, and people don't come to London to be English, they come to be themselves, right? Which is different to like America, for example, like where it's still multicultural there, but a lot of people have to assimilate to the American way, you know, and then it's like everything gets I don't it gets its American twing to it, you know, whereas like I feel like in London, okay, yeah, there is British Nigerian, British Indian, British whatever, but there's still quite a strong unfiltered version of those cultures. And so that was my idea of the UK. It was London, basically, you know? And, like, I guess you can't blame me because I was 4 years old when I left. But now that I've come back, and, like, currently I'm in Milton Keynes, but I've been to Sheffield, I've been to Brighton, I've been to Bournemouth. I haven't been so far north, but the point is that I've realized that outside of London, first of all, the UK is very different. It's very different, which makes sense because not everywhere is the cosmopolitan city. And so wanting to learn a bit more about what's happening here, like what are the problems in this country, and why internationally is this place acting in the way that it does? And yeah, so like I've been trying to do a bit of research, I guess. I've been watching people's takes on YouTube, but some of them are quite genuine takes, you know. And it just gave me this, and you know, at the same time, like obviously we know what's happening in the world right now, and like just 2 days ago, uh, there was a group here, a protest group that was made to be a terrorist organization, and I mean that's wild. That's like the first time in the whole of English history, apparently, that a protest group has been made as a or designated as a terrorist group. And this is going on whilst the UK is facing like an internal crisis. Like everyone keeps talking about the housing crisis, and like the living cost sucks here. It's super high, and like and the quality for that money is super low, and people are miserable, which debatable. Some people say English people and British people are miserable in general. I don't know. I don't want to believe that, but that might be the truth. They're just miserable. But the point being that we there's all these issues internally about not creating a society that is good for everyone. And at the same time, we support this kind of, not we, sorry, the British, the UK country or government supports this atrocity uh, in the world, internationally, like away from its borders. It spends so much energy on on killing. It spends so much energy on killing people who are not even in this country, whilst it lets people in this country die, you know? And, you know, and then it's like, it's very similar to what's happening in America, and like the rhetoric about like immigrants and people who are different, like others. It's so, how do I put it? To me, all these things, like all this, to me feels like it's connected to one of these major ideas, which is about land and how we see ourselves as individuals, as people, as human beings. And I think there's a certain arrogance in the British mentality, in the American mentality, in the Western European mentality. I mean, and I think maybe European is too far because I don't know enough about Eastern Europe, but the Western mentality of how people are more important than land, and how individuals are more important than people, right? And let me put it this way, like the 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 headline is like what Zionists got wrong amongst the many things that they've chosen to do that is just wrong. One of the questions I always have is like, okay, let's allow for their stories. You know, they tell this story of the 2,000 years, and this was a chosen land for a chosen people, whatever, special land for special people. Let's imagine we agreed with that, like with that notion, and it wasn't. Yeah, imagine we agreed with that notion. We just like, okay, let's accept that you guys felt this divine calling, and that land, even though you were looking at Uganda first, that land was the special land that was the divine calling for you, your divine people. My question is, okay, that land is special and it's divine. So doesn't that mean everything there is divine as well? So the people, the Palestinian people, who you took the land from, they are divine people, aren't they not? If you think about it, because the people belong to the land. It's not the land that belongs to anyone. We human beings die after like 100 years less. You know, the land stays. So who belongs to who? What belongs to what? The people belong to the land. So if the land is divine, the people who are already there must be divine and must be protected, right? And you know what? Like, my hunch, honestly, is that if you immigrated to Palestine back in the 1800s, not with an intention of dominating and stealing and pushing people out, they probably would have accepted you in that society. Those people who moved there would have been accepted in that society, and it would have been a new story, a new chapter to the long history of Palestine, right? But the problem was this arrogance of people and individuals believing that they are above land, right? They were not happy to move to this place as refugees because white people should not be refugees. They should be owners and powerful, and then they lose their dignity and their power. The story of the white race, which like is an invented story, it loses its power the second you have a country where white people are refugees and brown people have welcomed them, and they have to submit, or not even submit, but like to blend into their history and their culture that's there. And the thing is like, if these people were like honest with themselves, even if they still believed that their holy land was not where they came from in Europe, but was in Palestine, then they would also believe that the Palestinian people were holy people. And so bringing it back to the UK, and like looking at the housing crisis, the build infrastructure crisis, how we're unable to build, we're unable to create a train that goes to the north, we're unable to invest in the north more than we do the south, we are slashing the states, and the NHS is crumbling. It comes down to, and you look at like why those things are happening, and it's the privatization of a lot of those systems. Like, I was learning about how the government doesn't build things anymore because the government doesn't own those things. It has to outsource all the projects to private companies. And if you understand privatization and private companies, their incentive is profit. Their incentive isn't this idea of the British land and the story the land can give for the people. Their idea, their incentive, their purpose in life is growth, their own selfish growth, right? So what it turns out that when you give a company the rights to build on a piece of land, it's more profitable for them to hold that land unbuilt for as long as possible, so that prices of the worth of that land goes up, instead of actually building anything there, right? So, and it's not just that, it's also the paperwork that it takes. They make tons of money in that process. Like, people, if you don't know why the H2, whatever it's called, HS2 train is was fumbled, it's because of how permits and regulations and like planning, with the way we outsource it and privatize that process, it's turned into a way to make money, right? So they're essentially scamming the state. They're scamming the state, and when you scam the state, where does the state monies come from? It comes from people's taxes, right? And essentially, yeah, it's this disrespect of of the land, because it's like they believe that land is to be owned and is to be used for an individual's growth, right? And I was watching this video and it was talking about how this idea, the reason people have come to the state of existing comes back to the Thatcher times, where she said there's no such thing as a society, and that we're individuals and blah 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 blah. And that's why I said, like, the individual thinks it's more important than the people, and the people think they're more important than the land, right? And for me, that's a core idea of why so much of the world atrocities are happening. If you think about the history of the UK and the United Kingdom, the empire conquering and going all over the world to conquer, and it's because they don't have respect for the land. They don't, and it's not just respect, it's humility, to understand that, like, why couldn't they, if they wanted to travel the world, why couldn't they just travel the world? Why did they need to make it theirs? There's a misunderstanding somewhere, and I know, and I'm not coming from a place of naivety, because I know so much of what happens is a very calculated action by people with too much power. But you have to understand that everyone is a human being, and the level that you are capable of thinking is pretty much the same to any other human being in this world. And what that means is, when someone has a very calculated way of seeing the world and is about to make some actions that's going to devastate millions of people's lives, there's also a core belief somewhere, there's a core belief somewhere in that person that tells them that these actions are okay, that these actions are justified. Because I think often people know that it's cruel, but to them it's like that cruelty is okay because I'm doing it, first of all, and because if I wasn't doing it, someone else would be doing it, and blah blah blah. So I should be the one to do it at least, because then I'm not the one who's suffering. Other people are suffering. You're wrong. You are also suffering. You just don't know that you're suffering. But there's also this lack of humility, of the humility that it would have taken the Zionists to move to Palestine and ask the Palestinian people, can we live here with you? Imagine that conversation happened. Imagine they asked, please, can we come here? I wonder what would have happened. I think that's unprecedented, right? And I think if we come back to ourselves, come back to an understanding of our place in this world, as beings who do not live past 100, barely, if we come back to an understanding of of how we connect with others and what that means, like the love of people, the love of life, what that means truly, like what does that look like? The reason I loved London was because we had parks where you'd go to the park, it's a public space, and there's water everywhere. You drink, you go, you see some guys playing football, you're like, hey, can I join? And you're all playing together. No one needed to own the park, right? Now there are places that should be public spaces that are owned by private groups, and they can decide who gets to come here, who doesn't. And it's for what? Like, why do we not want to face each other and face ourselves? Because yeah, of course, if the Zionists went to Palestine and said, hey, we want to live here, there is a chance that the Palestinians wouldn't have wanted them. But our work as human beings, as people amongst people, is to appeal to each other's humanity, right? In those origins, that's a possibility. The Palestinians could have been like, no, we don't want you here. This is our country. And I feel that there could have been a way. There could have been a way for those Zionists who wanted a new life in a new land to appeal to the people who were in that land and to create a new Palestine. But instead, they chose their ideas above all else, their way above all else, with no respect, no humility. And so now we're in a world where people condemn the Zionists to inexistence. People wished they never existed because of what they've done. And that, to me, comes from an arrogance, a lack of humility, a weakness to be unable to face reality, that you can't just take from others. You can't just take, you can't just kill. You need to connect. You have to connect. And the people in the ruling class who live in this different world than the rest of us, who are like living in complete desire and indulgence, they are the least fed of all of us, because they are the least connected. They may be grand players in the mechanisms, the mecha mechanisms of this world, like, or the macro mechanisms of this world, because what a guy who's worth 400 billion does will obviously affect everyone else. But that is not connection. That is power. That is power, and power is not humanity. The more powerful you are, then doesn't mean the more human you become. So, I guess, yeah, what I'm saying is that although now we must fight to stop what others have launched onto us, to stop this kind of sickness of arrogance and greed, I guess, for lack of a better way of saying it, from destroying all of us, right? We have to fight that. But we also have to understand that we can't just fight it. We have to heal. We have to heal it. And yet, maybe there are some people who are too far gone. But for this to never happen again, we need a different answer. We need humility. We need earnest and honesty, and we need to face fear, because so much of it is people are preempting. They become violent because they're preempting. They believe their deepest fears is what they have done to the world will happen to them. That is their deepest fears. That's why Israel accuses everything they've accused the Palestinians, the Iranians of, the Lebanese. It's everything they've done, because that is their greatest fear, is for what they are doing to be done unto them, right? And so how do we face that fear as humanity amongst this globe, belonging to this earth, not owning it? How do we face the fear so that we can accept the humility and the truth that we are not more than another, or the universe, or the land, or the earth? How can we face that? And how can we then, because I believe then, by facing that, we can turn to being a people who create for each other, not afraid of each other, not accumulating as much as possible in competition with each other, or in fear of each other, or to have leverage over each other. To have the humility to appreciate what is beyond you. Because I can tell you right now, I would not want to be the most powerful person in the world. I would not want to live in a world where everyone was me. I would not want to live in a world where every single thing that happened only happened because I made it happen. There's a certain beauty and love about living in a world that you do not control. But to be able to see that beauty, you have to face the fear.